Now for the removal of the stock radiators. I've already gone through and unbolted most of the bolts and unclipped most of the electrical components. So to start, let's remove the hood. Set that off to the side. Unclip the headlights. Undo the bolts. You'll have two on the driver's side, two on the passenger side, these two up top, these two right here, and these two down here. I've already unbolted them, so let's slide that out of the way and set that off to the side. Okay, now that the front clip is removed, it makes the radiator hoses more accessible, so you can go ahead and start draining your coolant. While your coolant is draining, you can go ahead and unclip this regulator. Okay, now with that unclipped, go ahead and unhook your bleeder hoses from the reservoir bottle. There are two zip ties on either side of this radiator mounting bracket that has your headlight wiring loom in. Go ahead and cut them zip ties and remove the two bolts that are holding the top radiator bracket in. Once you get them bolts removed, you can go ahead and pull the top radiator bracket out of the way. Alright, now that your coolant is all drained, unhook your hoses. I've already got my hoses unhooked. And you can go ahead and remove the intercooler radiator. Set that off to the side. Now for the main engine radiator, lean it forward, unclip your fan. Go ahead and lift up. You may have to have an extra hand just to hold the plastics up to get the radiator out, but you can do it by yourself. Lean it forward, set that off to the side. Also, make sure that you've got the little pin rubbers out of this bottom bracket. Alright, now for the last step, this bottom bracket, we are going to remove that. There was 4 bolts. Remove that, set that off to the side. Okay, now to prep the hoses for the new TCP radiator, what you're going to need to do is remove this long upper inlet hose, and it's clamped back to this hard line that comes from the back of the engine along the bottom and out right here. Set that off to the side. We're going to be using a part of that in a minute. Next, go ahead and remove this 3/4 inch fill hose for the intercooler that comes from the reservoir bottle. Set that off to the side. We're going to be using that also. Now you're going to take your hose clamps from that 3/4 fill hose, put it on this new chunk of 3/4 hose that is provided in the kit. Go ahead and run that behind this 1-inch hose that is going up to the reservoir bottle. Go ahead and get that put on. And then tighten your clamp. Next, we're going to remove this bottom intercooler hose. Take the clamps off of this hose. Remove the hose. We're not going to be reusing this bottom hose. I'll take this upper intercooler hose. Take it off. Now put it down to the bottom hard line for the intercooler. Once you get it slid on, rotate it to where the end of the hose points up at a 45-degree up to where the radiator hose connection is going to be. Go ahead and tighten that, or put that clamp back on. Now we're going to take this fill hose that we pulled from the reservoir bottle. What you're going to need to do, slide your clamp down a little bit farther, and we're going to cut right here at this first little 30-degree bend is. We're going to cut that off right there and put that on. When you cut it, don't cut too much off. Cut right at the bend. Go ahead and slide that on. Tighten up your clamp after you make sure that it is pointed up at a 45 also to where the hose connection is going to be for the new TCP intercooler. You may have to take and shorten that up if need be, so that way you don't end up with a kink in the hose right here. Now that we have the intercooler hoses on here, slide your clamps on. Make sure that the squeezable part of the clamps is pointing back to the back of the UTV. That way if you need to get in there and rotate these hoses and make them fit a little better, them are easy to access that way. Next, we're going to take this long inlet radiator hose and we're going to cut it right here, roughly about 1.5 inches from the bend. I've already got this cut. We're going to need this to install the new section of hose going to the inlet of the radiator. If you do not want to cut your hose, go ahead, you can go to the parts store, find you a chunk of 1 inch inside diameter hose with a pre-molded 90 in it, and cut what off you need from that to make it work. Go ahead, got your 1 inch splice that comes in the kit. Go ahead and slide that on. Tighten up your hose clamp. Go ahead and get your spring-loaded clamp on this other end. Put it back on the hard line. Make sure that you've got this brake line to where it's not pinched or bent in any way. Next, you're going to take this chunk of 1 inch hose that comes in the kit. You're going to come up here up to the driver's side of this reservoir bottle. You're going to feed it down behind the frame along the firewall. Don't forget to put your hose clamp on. And slide it onto that coupler or the splice. The hose is going to have a natural curve to it, so go ahead and use that to your advantage and have that curve from the firewall up to the front driver's side corner alongside the reservoir bottle. Now that the hoses are prepped, make sure you get your hose clamps tight. We can go ahead and install the radiator. Okay, in this video we're going to be showing you the new radiator by TCP for the RZR 1000 Turbo. Show you what's in the kit, also a small quick comparison with the stock radiators, and also an installation video. Alright, the kit includes the engine radiator, the intercooler radiator, the new mounting top plate, a splice, hose clamps, and some hoses. And I'll show you where this stuff is going to go in the installation video. For the comparison between the stock and the new TCP radiator, there's quite a few points that are different. First is the fan. This is a 16-inch ball fan. The stock is a 12-inch fan. Also, we added 3 inches to the size or the height of the radiator. Also, we made the tanks a lot thicker. than the stock radiator. The thicknesses are the same. Also, we have a triple pass radiator. We got a baffle in here, and we got a baffle down here, which enables the coolant to come in the inlet, across the top third of the radiator, down across the middle of the radiator, and back across the bottom third, and out the outlet back to the engine. Now we have the intercooler radiator. That is the TCP intercooler radiator. This is the stock intercooler radiator. As you can see, the stock is a little wider and a little taller, but we rotate this up, you can see that it is a lot thinner. Stock radiator is 1 inch thick. The TCP radiator is 2 1/4 thick. Okay, now that we have the hoses and everything done, ready for the radiator to be installed, let's go ahead and get the radiator ready to go into the unit. First, take the intercooler radiator, pull the little rubber grommets off of the dowels. Remove the bleeder hose. Also, you can do this on the radiator. There's not going to be anything you need to take off of the radiator. We'll set this off to the side and bring our radiator over. Go ahead and put the rubber grommets on the dowels. Don't worry about putting the bleeder hoses on yet. You can do that after you've got the radiator installed in the UTV. And that is all you need to do to prep the radiator to go into the outfit. Alright, finally the last thing we need to do before we put any of the radiators in the outfit is we got this electric regulator that we need to pull off and mount to this bottom frame of the intercooler. All you need to do is remove the bolts. I've already removed one. Set this bracket out of the way, you won't be reusing it. Go ahead, set this on its flat on the table. Take the one bolt that has a nutsert on the front side of the radiator. Go ahead and get that one started. Do it finger tight. And once you get that started, take the 1 inch by 1/4 bolt and the flat washer and come down from the top, lock washer and the nut. Once you get that on there, go ahead and line it up straight, however you'd like it. Tighten them bolts down. The intercooler is now ready to be installed in the UTV. Now when installing the radiator, it may be useful to have another person handy to lift up these plastics as you're sliding in the radiator. You can do it by yourself, it is a little tough. I'm by myself, so I'll show you how that's done. Go ahead and lay the radiator in flat. You'll already have the fan shroud assembled to the radiator. As you're tilting it back in and sliding it down, lift up on the plastics. Make sure that you get it resting on the bracket down there, that it's not catching or poking holes in the radiator. And slide that around to where them pins and them little rubber grommets aren't being squished in any way that they're not supposed to. Everything, all the rubber has come down through the hole correctly. So before you slide that all the way back, you're going to need to connect your fan. Now at this point, you can go ahead and put your hose clamp on the upper radiator hose. and slide that on. Go ahead and connect the outlet hose down on the passenger bottom. Don't worry about doing the breather hose yet, because that will interfere in the top plate. Now we'll go ahead and do the intercooler radiator. Okay, now we're going to take the intercooler radiator. We have our electrical regulator bolted to the bottom frame here. We're going to go ahead and slide that up in there, bring that around to where the bottom outlet 90 fitting comes around the frame. You're going to take the 3/4 inch bolts that came with the radiator that it was bolted to. We're going to go ahead and take and bolt the intercooler to the radiator. Don't tighten them up, just finger tight right now. Okay, now that you have them finger tight, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to look down the tubes back to the other one, to the engine radiator, and you're going to line these tubes up with the other tubes on the radiator, so that way the tubes aren't staggered. That way they come lined up with each other. It'll help the airflow. And once you get that done, go ahead and tighten them down tight, and we'll go on to the next step. Now to put your front clip on, there's going to be an air dam screwed to the front clip all the way around. What you're going to need to do is undo the screws and remove that completely. Once you do that, you'll be able to put the front grille back on and not have any interference with anything like that. We'll be back, show you what it looks like. Now that we have the intercooler bolted to the radiator and secure, go ahead and hook up your hoses, your reservoir fill bottle hose, the bottom outlet hose, and the upper inlet hose for the intercooler. Tighten up the hose clamps. You can now take the regulator, clip them wires back together, take some zip ties that are included in the kit, zip tie this up to the frame. That way it's not rubbing on anything, getting pinched. Next, we're going to take the breather hose for the intercooler. Go ahead and slide that on and get the clamp put on. Don't hook it up to the reservoir bottle just yet. We need to get the top plate on. That will just interfere. Hold off on the breather tube for the radiator till after we get the top plate on. Okay, now for the top plate, we're going to bring it underneath the plastics, lift up on the plastics, bring this breather tube underneath, bring it back under the breather tubes on the reservoir bottle. Once you get it down over the pins, you want to make sure that you got it on the front set of holes in this top plate. You can go ahead and put your bolts in the top plate. You got one back here and one under the reservoir bottle. It's kind of tricky to get to, but you can use an extension to get to it. Now that you have the top plate on, you can go ahead and hook up the breather tubes. Get the clamps tight on that. Now we can move on to the grill and front clip. Now that you got the front clip back on, your headlights clipped back in, You can now fill the UTV up with coolant, follow Polaris's procedure on bleeding the air out of the system, and you've now finished the installation for your RZR 1000 turbo.